Hi, my name's T.C. Weber. I'm going to read from Zero Day Rising, the final book of the Better World Near Future Cyberpunk trilogy. Francis Jones woke in a room without light. He was on his back, head on a pillow and body on a firm mattress, freshly laundered sheet on top. His thoughts fluttered as wisps in a fog. His scalp itched along the top. He couldn't budge his arms or legs. He tried to focus. Where am I? How long have I been here? FBI agents had arrested him in his law office for conspiracy to commit offenses against the United States, acting on behalf of the Collective, a so-called terrorist organization. The Collective weren't terrorists. They weren't even organized, and Francis had never colluded with them, never even had contact with them. But the truth didn't matter. Homeland Security had claimed there was incriminating evidence on his computers, but wouldn't show it to him. They'd labeled him an enemy combatant, even more of a stretch, but a common Rand administration tactic to suspend habeas corpus rights. Francis had challenged it. He'd done this successfully for Whaley Freed and her sister Kyoko. But unfortunately his case had been assigned to a military judge who'd ruled against him. "You are Mr. Francis Jones of Baltimore, Maryland, correct?" came a pleasant female voice in the dark. "That's me," Francis thought. "Where am I?" he asked. Whatever was happening couldn't be legal. The Rand administration was overreaching, and it would be their downfall. For all its fault, America was a nation of laws. "Will you state your name for the record?" the voice said. Francis Jones, he thought. "Who are you?" he said. "Where am I?" He'd been through several interrogations already and invoked his Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination, like he advised all his clients to do. "Is your name Francis Jones?" "Yes," he thought. Why is my first thought to answer their questions? He still felt fuzzy. Maybe they'd given him drugs. "I have legal rights," he said, "and want to speak to a lawyer. Besides myself," he thought. "Answer the questions. They are not optional." His palms oozed cold sweat. "The Sixth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution requires the assistance of counsel for the accused." "You are not in the court system. This is a state of national emergency. Now please answer the questions. Is your name Francis Jones?" "The Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says I do not have to be a witness against myself." "But you do have to give your name." That's debatable, he thought. "Very well," he said. "Yes, my name is Francis Jones." The woman, her synthesized voice, it was awfully even and unflappable, asked more background questions. Francis refused to answer. "How long have you worked with the Collective?" she or it asked next. Never, he thought. They were asking the same questions as the previous interrogators. Why bother? Were they just trying to break him down? The voice repeated the question, then asked more, then more, then more. All questions he'd been asked before. A picture of his face appeared in the ceiling. Why are they doing that, he wondered. It was replaced by a picture of a beach, one of those screen background shots. Then a puppy, then a toddler with blonde curls. What the hell is this? Then they showed a portrait photo of Whaley, probably from a cache of Baltimore Herald employee bios. She was in her mid-20s at the time of the photo, with bright magenta hair, high cheekbones, and smooth beige skin. She looked bored in the picture. After that, her Greek-American boyfriend Pelopidas appeared above, back when he had a buzz cut, long sideburns, and braided Jack Sparrow beard. He was in Brazil somewhere now and had probably changed his appearance. Then a mugshot of that teenage hacker, Charles Lee. Probably taken when he was arrested for that computer prank that pissed off the wrong people. He was also in Brazil now. Then a screenshot showing some computer commands. He couldn't decipher them. Then the collective logo, a barcode. He wasn't sure what it meant, with a sword in front, slicing through a chain. They kept flashing pictures. Francis shut his eyes. They'll pay for doing this, he thought. I'm not letting them get away with it. The scene is from Kyoko's point of view. She's one of the main characters of the series. And in Tonic, a 42-foot fishing boat they'd chartered with cryptocurrency bounced into the furious black sky and smashed down again with a crash. Kyoko gripped the arms of her tightened-down swivel chair and fought not to throw up or scream in terror. Battered by wind and rain, the clear tarp around the bridge fluttered violently, threatening to rip from its fasteners and fly away. "Quite the squall, ain't it?" the captain said, gripping the steering wheel from the center chair, struggling to keep the boat angled against the white-capped waves. If they swung parallel to the waves, he'd explained, they could capsize, and if they drove straight into them, they might bury the bow. The captain was old, with leathery dark skin and thinning gray curls beneath a Miami Dolphins Super Bowl champions cap. "Don't normally go out in weather like this," he said, "especially after dark." That was Pell's idea, so no one would see them. "We have faith in you," Kyoko told the captain. According to his Comnet site, he'd been piloting boats for decades. Gripping the other passenger chair on the bridge deck, Nicholas stared into his augmented reality glasses, verifying their course and monitoring the VHF radio for Coast Guard patrols. Pell had lessened that worry by calling in a fake tip about drug smuggling into Biscayne Bay, well to the south. Pell, Charles, and Alzira were below in the cabin, along with their bags of gear. The boat didn't have a SATCOM, so there wasn't much they could do until they reached the mainland. Another rise. Kyoko's muscles tensed in anticipation. The boat plunged down, leaving her stomach behind. They smacked bottom with a shudder. Water crashed over the bow and splashed against the tarp. Despite the scopo patch behind her left ear, Kyoko almost retched. "Please, Omazu, O Poseidon, grant us safe passage." Kyoko had given up on the gods after what happened in Sao Paulo, but this was a good time for a truce. The captain tacked to stay on course. "'Tain't the first time someone paid me to sneak across the water," he said. "But first time I've been dumb enough to do it in a storm." And they were only an hour out of port. It would have been a 4-hour trip in calm seas, the captain had said. But in this weather, they'd be lucky to arrive at all. No lights in the horizon or in the air, not that Kyoko could see far through the storm. The radar display on the console screen showed some white triangles on the perimeter, embedded in wide bands of green, yellow, and red. Kyoko pointed at the screen. "What are those triangles?" she asked. They had small alphanumeric codes on the side. "Don't touch nothing," the captain growled. "Freighters, tankers, not to worry," he added. Another rise and fall. A loud thump came from the cabin below. What was that? Someone shouted, the voice carrying above the dueling wind and engines. It sounded like Charles, cursing. Kyoko turned to Nicholas. "What is it? What happened?" Nicholas spoke quietly into his wraparound mic, then turned toward her. "Charles wants to know if there aren't any seatbelts." "Is he okay?" Nicholas shrugged. "Probably. He'd be screaming if he broke something." The waves diminished as they neared the Florida coast, although the rain didn't let up. "Westerly winds working in our favor now," the captain said. Kyoko checked her comlink. They were 2 hours behind schedule. "Can we go faster then?" "Yeah." The captain pushed the dual throttle forward. They picked up speed. It was hard to see much through the sheets of rain, but a glow appeared along the horizon, brightest to the south. Ahead, a light swept across the sky every 10 seconds or so. Is that a lighthouse? Kyoko asked. Yep, the captain said. That's the Jupiter White House. That's where we headed. I got a GPS navigator, but I like to see where I'm going. Kyoko didn't see any other boats, or anything on the radar display. No comnet signal now, but they were still miles from the coast, with heavy rain in between. He hoped MPAT was still waiting for them and hadn't given up, or been accosted by police. The waves picked up as they approached the inlet, rocking the boat up and down, left and right. Sweat dripped down the captain's cheeks as he stared ahead, gripping the wheel. Hate these shoals. They roared between two rock jetties, then the waves died. The captain slowed the boat, and it seemed to sag with relief. Welcome to the United States, Kyoko told Nicholas in quiet Portuguese. These scenes are from the middle of the book. The first scene is from President Rand's point of view. Why isn't anyone enforcing the law? President Al Rand shouted on the video connection to the Secret Service director. The police were just standing by as thousands of radicals marched toward the White House. Al assumed the demonstration would be squashed before it could start. There are too many of them, the director said. We should fly you to Camp David as a precaution. Al's forehead flushed with heat. Are you telling me they're a threat? They won't get inside the White House fence, the man said. But to be safe... You think I should run away? The country re-elected me in a landslide. The people have spoken. I want those tantrum throwers dispersed. That's an order. Sir, you'll have to run that through the Homeland Secretary. I don't have the authority. Al brought up Secretary John Powell. Why aren't you handling this? The city police decided to sit back, John said, and there aren't enough federal assets on site to manage that many people. The good news is we have agents inside their march and monitoring their communications, and their intent seems to be peaceful. Al tried not to show his frustration. The fact is, these people don't have a permit and they're breaking the law. I want them dispersed, by any means necessary, but make sure we don't get blamed if anyone's hurt. Yes, sir. Al hung up. He had more resources at his disposal. The Posse Comitatus Act, which he hoped to get Congress to overturn, prohibited domestic deployment of the Army, but not the National Guard. The D.C. Guard were answerable directly to the President, couldn't be countermanded by the mayor, and had already been put on alert. Al called the Secretary of Defense. Mobilize the D.C. National Guard. Coordinate with Powell, but hell if I'm going to surrender the nation's capital to a mob of radicals. I want the streets cleared and order restored. This next scene is from Whaley's point of view. She'll be the woman wearing the green hat and carrying the camera. Whaley's aerial feed showed more police arriving and forming a cordon at 14th Street just ahead. Walking next to her, Shakti grabbed Whaley's arm. Check the Skywatch channel. That was one of their camera drones. Whaley switched to a view well above the city. Government drones, including big fixed-wing aircraft, were inbound from the southeast, along with fast-flying fighter jets and military helicopters. And armored vehicles were pulling out of the D.C. Armory over by the Anacostia River. They hadn't thought Rand would call in the National Guard. They were almost never deployed for law enforcement, or that he could mobilize them so quickly. Olive drab armored personnel carriers, heavy trucks with canvas tops, old Humvees, and water cannon vehicles rumbled toward the marchers. They were joined by armored vehicles with big vertical plates on top. Whaley had been present when those weapons were first used, against people defending the Independent News Center in Baltimore. They emitted some type of pulsed microwaves to scramble people's brains and make them helpless. Whaley relayed the incoming threats over her peer-to-peer voice channel. She had warned the others about the electromagnetic weapons, and they'd prepared as well as they could. Everyone had been instructed to layer aluminum foil beneath their hats and bring enough for others. It suggested conspiracy paranoia, but it could actually help here. The march reached 14th Street. They were supposed to continue west, but a line of federal police in riot gear blocked further progress. Some held automatic rifles or shotguns, and the National Guard was on the way. "What are our options?" Shakti asked over the tactical comm channel. The clergy and legislators in front of the march approached the police and began negotiating. As Whaley and the others waited, her signal app detected strong pulses north and south of the mall. Their lower drones began dropping out of the sky. Fighter jets arrived. Puffs of smoke erupted from the marchers' high-flying drones. The Skywatch channel went blank. "The police said our only option is to disperse and go home," the voice said over the tactical channel. "Hell with that," Dingo said on the channel. "Let's take the alternate route." No one disagreed. They'd be exiting federal property, and the mayor's office had promised not to interfere as long as the marchers remained peaceful. Dingo shouted through his megaphone, "North on 14th! Forward!" Others repeated the call. The march headed north, keeping to the sidewalk until it became too narrow. According to Whaley's map display, they could cross west on Pennsylvania Avenue or any street north of them. The federal police followed them north. Their numbers grew. More watchers hovered overhead. Encrypted text messages from spotters said the National Guard vehicles were coming down Constitution Avenue, with some veering up Pennsylvania. Clammy sweat slickened Whaley's mask and clogged its micropores. "Puppies and kittens!" Shakti shouted over the Universal Channel. Dingo had suggested the phrase from an old show called Z Nation. Whaley's teeth clenched as fear turned to anger. "This is a peaceful march." Marchers took off their hats and fitted foil over their skulls. Whaley and a lot of the others had already done that. They tied on lemon or vinegar-soaked bandanas to protect against tear gas. Whaley said lemon juice. She hated the smell of vinegar. Police had set up a roadblock at the massive intersection with Pennsylvania. Lines of armor-clad men behind big plastic shields. Again, the clergy and state legislators went up to negotiate. Armored vehicles arrived from the east and north, including two with the big metal plates on top, and two more fitted with water cannons. "Two more microwaves at Constitution and 14th, the man's voice said over Whaley's channel. "Water cannons, too." "Disperse now," a voice came from a loudspeaker atop one of the armored cars. "This is your final warning." Where would they disperse to? They were trapped between massive buildings. Police slapped cuffs on the negotiation team and hauled them off. Armored vehicles advanced, filling all 6 lanes of 14th Street. Like in Baltimore so long ago, black stripes streaked across Whaley's data glasses, scrolling irregularly from top to bottom. This time, thanks to the foil, she didn't get dizzy and sick. She pulled off her data glasses and brought up her shielded video kit. Not everyone was prepared for the electromagnetic attack, though. At least a dozen people writhed on the ground. Police shot tear gas canisters into the crowd. Dingo and others picked them up and threw them back at the cops. Water cannons sprayed the front marchers, sweeping back and forth, soaking people and knocking them off their feet. While many held their ground, some holding up shields of their own, others retreated. Whaley and Shakti rushed behind a parked white sedan with city decals and took cover. Dingo accompanied them but remained in the street. Steadying her camera against the car roof, Whaley kept filming. A contingent of young people, most garbed in black with mismatched helmets and backpacks, advanced toward the police lines. They wore bandanas or gas masks and carried shields or slingshots. Black blockers, most likely. The ones carrying shields formed a barricade, the same way the riot police did. Others loaded liquid-filled balloons into big slingshots. "Fire!" one of the black blockers yelled. Balloons arced through the air toward the water cannon vehicles. Red paint exploded where they hit, some splattering the windshields. "Aim for their cameras, too!" Dingo shouted on his megaphone. The barrage of paint balloons continued. The armored police fired more canisters. Blinding white flashes exploded among the marchers, and loud bangs echoed up and down the street. The sound was deafening, and shockwaves rattled Whaley's bones. Other police pointed shotguns and blasted the crowd with beanbags and plastic bullets. Most bounced off shields. Plastic rounds smacked the windshield of the car protecting Whaley and Shakti, leaving a circular web of cracks. Except for the black blockers, the march collapsed into chaos. People screamed and tried to run back the way they'd come. Trouble was, they were being attacked from the other direction, too. It was getting hard to see with all the smoke. Ears ringing, Whaley turned to Shakti, who was trembling. "We have to abort," she shouted. "People are getting hurt." Shakti rushed into the street and grabbed Dingo's megaphone. The police were jamming all their electronics. "Dance till you drop!" she yelled. "Pass it along!" That was the code to split up and head to safe houses around the city. A lot of the marchers were locals and knew where to go. The Federal Triangle metro station was only a block away, and there were alleyways to escape on foot. Then they'd regroup and occupy the parks when things had calmed. Lines of federal police and National Guard in riot gear advanced from the intersection. They passed the paint-spattered water cannon vehicles. They swung batons at anyone in their way. The black blockers retreated. Dingo gave Shakti a quick kiss. "Go! I'll delay the enemy." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't be stupid, you have a warrant." She grabbed him by the arm and pulled him along. Whaley, Shakti, and Dingo ran back down the street. They followed a big group past a handful of nervous-looking cops into a narrow one-way street, hemmed in by ponderous stone buildings. To the left was City Hall, and to the right, the International Trade Center. Past there, they'd be behind the police lines and could escape in 3 different directions.